My son is no murderer. My son didn't intend to hurt anyone. My son was defending himself. And that's what hurt so bad.
His mother recounts the moment she addressed the jury and made her plea to them during the sentencing phase.
To have mercy on my son.
A mother stands in front of a camera in Texas. Her son was hauled off to a state prison less than 24 hours earlier. And the first words out of her mouth are not, "I'm sorry." They are not, "We respect the verdict." They are 4 words that just reopened the most divisive criminal case in America. My son was defending himself. 12 jurors heard that exact argument. They listened to it for 7 days. They studied the video, the knife, the testimony of more than 20 witnesses. And then they walked into a deliberation room. And in less than 3 hours, they came back and said one word: no. So who's telling the truth here? The mother who carried this boy, raised him, moved him across state lines for a better life, or the 12 strangers who looked at the same 30 seconds and called it murder? Here's what I need you to understand before we're done. While the entire internet is screaming about this case, while celebrities are posting and politicians are podcasting and crowds are chanting in parking lots, there is one quiet building in downtown Dallas where none of that noise reaches. And inside that building, this case is not over, not even close. Most people have completely missed what's about to happen there. By the end of this video, you won't. Stay with me. Here's something true crime almost never shows you. We show you the arrest. We show you the perp walk. We show you the trial, the verdict, the gasp in the courtroom. And then the cameras pack up. The reporters chase the next headline. The crowd goes home. And the story, as far as the world is concerned, is over. But the day after a verdict, that's when the mask comes off. Because what's left, once the spectacle clears out, is just 2 families sitting in 2 different houses on opposite sides of a Texas town, both of them shattered, both of them living the same nightmare from opposite ends of it. June 10th, 2026. The morning after a Collin County jury sentenced 19-year-old Karmelo Anthony to 35 years in prison for the murder of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. And on that morning, both families spoke. And what they said tells you everything about why this case will never, ever be simple. Let's start across town from the Anthonys, with the father of the boy who isn't coming home. Jeff Metcalf woke up that morning and described a feeling that no one expected. He didn't describe sadness. He said it felt like 1,000,000 pounds had been lifted off his shoulders. And then he said something I want you to actually sit with, because it reframes everything we think we know about loss. He said people think grief is sadness. It's not. It's rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. He talked about the body camera footage from that stadium, about hearing his other son, Hunter, Austin's identical twin, screaming, "Oh God, my brother, my twin," while Austin bled out on a high school track infield, surrounded by kids who were there to run a meet. Jeff said that as a parent, you spend your whole life wanting to protect your kids. And in the one moment it mattered most, he wasn't there to do it. And then he said something that complicates the cartoon version of this story that's all over the internet. He said he forgave Karmelo Anthony, but, and this is the part that lands like a punch, he made it clear the forgiveness wasn't for Karmelo. It was for himself. So the rage wouldn't sit inside him and grow like a cancer, so he could survive. That's not a villain. That's not a saint. That's a man trying to live through something no parent should ever have to live through. And on the other side of that same town, another family was trying to survive too. A family the internet has decided is either a family of monsters or a family of martyrs, depending entirely on which side of the algorithm you live on. The truth, like always, is harder than the headline. Karmelo Anthony's parents, his mother, Kala Hayes, and his father, Andrew Anthony, sat down in front of cameras one day after their son was taken to a Texas state prison. And what came out of that room stopped people cold. His mother went first. Through tears, through a voice that was barely holding itself together, she said it plainly. My son is no murderer. My son didn't intend to hurt anyone. My son was defending himself. And that's what hurts so bad. Now let that land for a second, not as a political statement, but as a human one. This is a mom watching her firstborn, her oldest child, the boy she packed up and moved from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Texas to give a better shot at life, being led away in handcuffs to serve 35 years. And in the deepest part of her heart, she does not believe he is a murderer. She can't make it fit. The verdict and the boy she raised will not occupy the same space in her mind. She described the hardest moment of her life, standing up at sentencing, just her. No other witnesses, no more exhibits to play, no more arguments to make. One mother, 12 strangers, and a single ask. Have mercy on my son. That's what she said she told them. And then she said something that's going to sit with you for the rest of this video. She said, I know they had their minds made up already. There really wasn't much I could say to change their minds. Hold on to that sentence, because we are going to come back to whether she's right, and the honest answer is not what either side wants it to be. Then his father spoke, and Andrew Anthony hit different. He wasn't crying. He was somewhere past crying. Somewhere that looks like a man operating on pure, controlled devastation. The kind of calm that's scarier than tears. His word for what happened to them, delusional. He said, we were delusional. We thought we were going to get a fair shake. Think about what it takes for a parent to use that word about himself. That's a father admitting he walked into that courthouse believing in the American justice system and walked out convinced it had made up its mind before the trial even started. He said his son was already convicted the day he walked out of that jail. Look at the news, he said. It was already done. There was no innocent until proven guilty. In his telling, it was guilty, and then a trial to make it official. And then the part that genuinely stops you. He said the threats haven't stopped. Not after the verdict. Not after 35 years was handed down. Not after. His words, they got what they wanted. He says he picks up his phone and sees strangers telling his family they want them dead. So here is where I have to stop hiding behind neutrality, because Kala Hayes didn't just cry on camera. She made specific claims. And in true crime, you don't get to just play the emotional clip and move on. You owe people the truth. So let's actually test what she said, fairly, from every side. No cheerleading, no flinching. Claim number 1. Her son didn't intend to kill anyone. Here's what the evidence actually showed. Karmelo Anthony did not show up to that track meet with a plan to kill Austin Metcalf. These two boys went to different schools. They had never met. There was no history, no feud, no premeditated plot. On that narrow point, she may have a case. But here's where it gets complicated. And this is the part nobody yelling online wants to explain. Under Texas law, murder does not require a plan. You don't need to scheme for days. You can form the intent to kill in a split second. The moment you pull a knife and drive it into someone's chest, the law says the intent lives inside that act itself. And that's the sequence the jury saw. Karmelo reached into his bag. He pulled out a knife. He stabbed Austin Metcalf once in the chest. The medical examiner testified the wound was not survivable. One strike, one choice, maybe 30 seconds of someone's entire life. That's what they convicted him on. Not a plan, a choice. So when his mother says he didn't intend to kill, in a mother's world, she's talking about the boy who left the house that morning. But the law isn't looking at the morning. It's looking at those 30 seconds. Both things can be true, and that's the tragedy. Claim number 2. And this is the big one. Did the jury have its mind made up before she ever opened her mouth? This one's harder. So let's look at the facts. Cold. 12 jurors, 0 of them black. They deliberated less than 3 hours to convict and only a few more hours to land on a sentence. In a case this complex, this racially charged, this nationally watched, that's fast. Now, why was it fast? 2 possibilities, and an honest channel has to put both on the table. Possibility 1, the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution put up more than 20 witnesses. They had video. They had Karmelo's own words at the scene. When the picture is that clear, juries move quick. Possibility 2, 12 people, none of whom shared Karmelo's background, his community, or his experience, were never going to see this the way a more diverse jury might have. And that exact question is now sitting on a desk at the 5th District Court of Appeals in Dallas. Here's what makes it real and not just a talking point. During jury selection, prosecutors used their strikes to remove the final black prospective jurors from the pool. The defense immediately fired off what's called a Batson challenge, named after the 1986 Supreme Court case, Batson versus Kentucky, which makes it illegal to strike a juror because of their race. The prosecution's reason? They said it wasn't about race. It was about profession. Those jurors were educators. And this was a case about a kid in a school setting. The judge, John Roach Jr., accepted that explanation and denied the challenge. But here's the question appellate courts exist to ask. Were there white educators left sitting on that final panel? Because if white jurors with the same background were kept, then they were teachers isn't a race-neutral reason. It's a cover story. And catching exactly that kind of cover story is the entire reason Batson exists. Which brings us to the parking lot. After the verdict, a crowd gathered outside the Collin County Courthouse in McKinney. And Karmelo's grandmother, Tony Hayes, stepped out, climbing into a car to leave, and started chanting 3 words over and over. Racist, biased, prejudiced. The crowd picked it up, and it grew. Now, a grandmother in a parking lot is not filing a legal brief. She's in pain, in public, saying the only words she's got. But strip away the emotion and ask the cold question. Is she factually wrong? She can't prove racism, not to the standard a court needs to throw out a conviction. But is she pointing at something real in the documented record? Possibly. And the right place to settle, that isn't a parking lot, and it isn't a comment section. It's that quiet building in Dallas. But I promised you fairness in every direction. So here's a claim the parents made that we cannot just let slide. They told CBS News that all of the witnesses lied. Not some, not most. All of them. The mother said, everyone. The father confirmed every witness statement was inconsistent. All of them. So let's check it. Were there inconsistencies? Yes, genuinely. Different students remembered it differently. Some heard, touch me and see what happens. Others heard, touch me and find out. Some described the knife coming up one way. One described it another. That's documented, and it's real. But here's the thing. That's not a conspiracy. That's memory. Eyewitness testimony is famously unreliable. Psychologists have studied it for decades. Drop a dozen terrified teenagers into 30 seconds of chaos, and they will all walk away with slightly different snapshots. That's human. And the witnesses weren't avengers. They were mostly students, under oath, with no motive to lie, no relationship to Austin, no axe to grind. They were scared kids who told police what they saw. And On the core facts, they lined up. Karmelo was at the wrong tent. He was asked to leave. He didn't. He said something threatening before any contact. Austin shoved him. Karmelo pulled a knife and stabbed him. Every witness aligned on that spine. So were there small contradictions in the details? Yes. Did everyone lie? That's a far harder thing to stand behind. But here's what we have to hold with some grace. These parents weren't in that courtroom the way the jury was. They're seeing this through the eyes of people who love this boy, who can't reconcile the son they raised with the verdict that came down. That's not dishonesty. That's grief. And grief has its own kind of vision. Now, here's the detail that slipped past almost everyone in the noise. The day after the verdict, Karmelo Anthony filed a notice of appeal, and in the same breath, he filed a sworn statement that he is broke, that he can't afford a lawyer, that he needs the court to appoint one for free. Sit with that. This family raised more than $500,000 online for his defense. That money paid for a private attorney, Mike Howard, expert witnesses, a full trial team, over a year of legal warfare. And now, the day after the verdict, he's telling a court he's penniless. So where did the money go? The honest answer: it got spent. A year-long, high-profile murder trial with private attorneys at full rates can burn through $500,000. Easy. Sometimes more. But here's why it matters. Appeals are their own specialized world. The lawyers who fight trials aren't always the lawyers who win appeals. Appeals are won on case law, on written briefs, on arguing in front of panels of judges. A completely different game. If Karmelo ends up with a court-appointed appellate attorney carrying a heavy caseload, the resources just aren't the same as the private team that fought his trial. And on a case this complicated, that could matter a great deal. So the appeal's been filed, but filed is just the starting gun. Here's the road ahead. First, every transcript, exhibit, motion, and ruling, thousands of pages, gets sent to the 5th District Court of Appeals in Dallas. The court reporter has to type out every word spoken in the trial, which alone takes months. Then, the defense files its full brief, laying out every legal error they claim happened. The prosecution answers. The judges read everything and decide. How long? Dallas appellate attorney Chad Ruback put it bluntly: months or years. And another veteran appellate lawyer, David Cole, laid out the 3 questions that actually matter on appeal, and notice that none of them are, did he do it? There. Were we even in the right county? Or should this have moved somewhere with less pretrial poison? Did we pick the jury correctly? Meaning, was that Batson ruling right? And did the judge instruct the jury correctly on the law, self-defense, on sudden passion, on the burden of proof? Any one of those, decided wrong, could reverse the conviction or trigger a brand new trial. But Ruback also said the part you need to hear. It is really, really hard to get an appeals court to overturn a jury that sat through all the evidence. Not impossible, but hard. The vast majority of criminal appeals in Texas are denied. Appellate courts don't retry cases. They hunt for legal errors. They decide whether the process was fair, not whether the man is guilty. And while all of that grinds forward quietly, the noise is getting louder. Cardi B posted the night of the verdict, saying prosecutors just wanted to make an example out of Karmelo, reaching millions in hours. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett went on her podcast and made claims about the jury that reporting and fact-checkers have since contested. And then Jeff Metcalf stood at that courthouse and said it straight. This was never about race or politics, but people chose to make it about both. Here's the unbearable tension at the center of this whole thing. Both can be true at once. This can be a case about one knife, one tent, 30 seconds, and a legal system can still carry real structural problems around race that shaped how those 30 seconds got prosecuted, judged, and sentenced. Those two truths don't cancel each other out. They sit side by side, and that's exactly why this case refuses to resolve cleanly. So let's land this honestly. Austin Metcalf is dead. That is real. That is a tragedy that can never be undone. And Karmelo Anthony was convicted by an all-white jury in a racially charged case. And the legal system has tools built specifically to test whether that process was fair. Those tools are now in motion in Dallas. And every celebrity post, every podcast, every parking lot chant is happening outside that building. That building is quiet. And that building is the only one that matters now. The realistic outcomes. Most likely, the conviction stands, and Karmelo serves at least 17 and a half years before he's even eligible for parole, walking out, if he's lucky, in his mid to late 30s. Less likely, but not impossible. The court finds the Batson ruling was wrong, or a venue problem, or a flawed jury instruction, and orders a new trial. Courts have reversed Texas convictions on Batson grounds before. It's a long shot. It's not a fantasy. And here's the cruelest part. Neither family gets to rest. Jeff Metcalf said his forgiveness was for him, so the rage doesn't consume him. Calla Hayes says she will not stop fighting for her son. Hunter Metcalf now carries 2 diplomas, his and his twins. And Karmelo Anthony is in an intake facility in Huntsville right now, being processed, classified, assigned a number. And in a courthouse in downtown Dallas, the next chapter is already being written, quietly, slowly, with no cameras and no chanting. Just judges and documents, and the one question that's been at the heart of this from the very beginning. Was the process fair? We're going to find out, but not today, not tomorrow, maybe not for a year, maybe 2. And both of these families are going to have to live inside that, waiting for a very, very long time. What do you think the appeals court should do? Tell me below, and keep it human. Both of these families are real, and they're both reading. I'm the crime scholar. I'll see you on the next one.